Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. It's Saturday. You know what that means. Let's talk about what's upcoming next week on all the crowdfundings. Now, last week of April, so hopefully a lull before the upcoming storm of May, especially with everything else that's already funding right now. I mean, we don't really need any more temptation, do we? And hopefully there won't be too much, but as always, there's always a few things that fly under the radar that, are always tempting. Myself included. Every single week that I've been doing this, always one or two that surprise me, catch my eye, and that I just love seeing. Even if I back it or I don't end up backing it. So just I like to see what's out there. So yesterday's roundup, earlier in the week's games for quarter two to be aware of between now and the end of June. Monday, there's going to be a Monday morning hotness quarterback. I'm going to have a Marvel United review. I'm going to have a Should You Back for Marvel United and Monster Hunter. So if any of those things sound appealing to you, hit the subscribe button because they're going to be coming out and I'm going to be putting stuff out over the next couple days. Hopefully all in succession, hopefully good timing wise so that it's not too early, it's not too late. But kind of time it appropriately there. So we'll see what happens. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for clicking, and let's get to it. I've been preambling too long. Let's do this. First up, we have Impendium. This is an area control style game, a sequel or the next in line of ones from the developers, Dragon Egg Games, who did the previous game, Novolux. You are taking up the mantle of building a new universe. Alrighty. Worker placement, area control. You gotta make new stuff, but you got a couple powers that may be, in the meantime, sort of liking what you're doing, but I mean, not liking what you're doing, known as the void and entropy. Stuff defies the natural law of things. The void is not going to like that. Constructing new stars, new galaxies, all that sort of craziness in space, while trying to battle those harbingers of the void off in the first place because you're doing such unnatural stuff, is what you're going to be doing via resource management and the worker placement in the first place. Enhance your abilities, build better stuff. Once you control a certain portion of the galaxy, you win. Launching on April 26th. Apart from that, there's not a whole lot out there. There's a little bit of images. There's not a whole lot on the forums. There's no videos. There's no rulebook. So that's about all we know until it launches. So we're going to have to see what it actually looks like when it shows up on the 26th. If that sounds interesting to you, I mean, I think it's an interesting concept. The tagline being creation comes with a cost. So, peaked? Check it out. Next up by Alley Cat Games is Dice Theme Park, sort of the spiritual successor to their previous Dice Hospital. But this is taking a different place on things because what you're doing is you are building, obviously, your own theme park here. Now, the difference being you have your hexes being your rides and your amusement park of various parts and creations. But the dice are going to actually be the customers or the tourists or the goers to the attractions and the park in the first place. And when they move from attraction to attraction, they slowly decrease the numbers of the pips that it is on to begin with. And so how you are able to get them from one to the other the most efficiently in order for them to maximize the most amount of pips without being wasted is the goal of the game, because when they get down to zero, boom, you boots them out of the park. Now, the other interesting twist, they say, is how you decide turn order of who's picking what and who goes first in such a game. They say that you have numbers 1 through 6 in terms of turn order cards, essentially. And what you're doing is you're combining those, any two of your choice. And so the lowest combination goes first and gets to first pick. But when you choose those two, you pass them then to the person to your left, so they're getting the ones that you used. So how strategic are you going to be in terms of what you're passing and what you're getting and how that's influencing what you want on a round by round basis? They say it's going to be more interactive than maybe Dice Hospital. So if Dice Hospital was not interactive enough for you, you might want to be checking this one out. Now, they also say it's more complex, so take that for what you will. If Dice Hospital is too complex for you, pass. If it wasn't complex enough, eyes and ears on this one, right? Unfortunately, no videos, no rulebook yet, but with the pedigree of Dice Hospital, and I think it was been relatively well received, it'll be interesting to see if this captures more people, because I would say universally this is probably a slightly more appealing theme, especially with dice. Dice being used creatively is always going to draw people in, even myself. You know, dice worker placements are one of the few things I even glance at, you know, from that side of things. So there is definitely an appeal outside of the worker placement-esque that dice will often attract, and we'll see if that holds true in Dice Theme Park when it launches on the 26th. Next up on the 26th is Earth Rising. Now, the longer title is Earth Rising 20 Years to Transform Our World, because it's a cooperative game about saving the world, because there's 20 years until the ecological system collapses on Earth. Getting a little bit too close to home here right now. Now, as it says, this is a 1 to 6 player cooperative game, and just based on the pictures alone right now, it sort of gives me the vibe of a pandemic with the eco-friendly theme, if you will. As you can see here, I mean, you have the various people that you're going to, the climatologist, the ecologist, the activist, the grassroots politician, the innovator, and the eco-investor. So you can see that they each have sort of an active, but they also maybe have a passive ability, as you can do on your actions or for what extra cards you need or whatever it may be. There you go. There are actually some videos out there, and you can see a little bit of what the setup is going to look like in terms of, it looks like different sections or different sectors that you're going to be having to manage. As well as a population in poverty in the center. So it's definitely incorporating the theme there. And there are several videos out here in the first place, including one from Dice and Dragons, an unboxing, as well as some solo gameplay as well. So you can get a little bit of a sense of what you're going to be doing already if it interests you. And hey, this is an underutilized to say the least, theme. And so how is it going to take the pandemic, fire-esque stomping mechanic and reinvent it in a different way? And so I think just from a what does this look like and what is this doing different, it's going to be intriguing to see from Stop, Drop, and Roll Games. And so if that interests you, the theme or the cooperative mechanics alone, especially for a game that plays up to 6, check it out when it launches on the 26th. Next up is Clash of Armies Medieval, and this is a 30-minute 2-player deck building game from Poncho Games that I really don't know much about. It's sort of flown under the radar. There are a couple reviews in 3 different languages on Board Game Geek. All of them are very short and sweet and saying this is a great deck builder and it's amazing and you should check it out. But I don't really get a whole lot more information when I'm looking. Here you can kind of see Portuguese, German, English, but these are both super short. And there are a couple videos out there as well. And it's going to be launching on the 27th. And again, a nice Dice and Dragons video and a few other Kickstarters, all from about 6 months ago. So I have to wonder if this is a relaunch because of the dates of some of these, because only a couple of these are more recent. So I think the how to play would be very interesting. And again, I think with this type of game, how do you differentiate yourself in terms of deck building? This is a head-to-head one. It says strategy, intelligence, card acquisition will lead to victory. And so how, though? I need a how. How are you differentiating yourself with this? You can see some of the cards here. I mean, they seem relatively straightforward in the text and the symbology, but there's a lot of stuff going up top here, which I'm guessing is what type of unit they are, what their cost, their attack, their defense, and something else. So looks like you're gonna have different factions. Different bug cards, it says right there, and you can see a little bit of what it's going to appear to be like. So overall, I need to see more information. It looks intriguing, but again, deck building is deck building. And what makes it different than Dominion, than Aeon's End, than, you know, the All or Nothing games that are historically factual? Like, what unique twist on it is this going to offer? And I don't see that on the Board Game Geek page, so we're just going to have to kind of wait and see when it launches on the 26th, and I think that's probably going to be the big determiner of how well and if it funds in the first place. So if that interests you with its more medieval theme, check it out when it launches on the 27th. Also on the 27th, one of my pre-picks of the week is My Father's Work. And this is a very interesting game. And I say this because I think it's going to attract and be of interest to a lot of people, not because it's personally my personal tastes. because it is a worker placement. But it is a twist on the worker placement. Think of Frankenstein when he created the monster. And it is basically a rift of that, only you are playing sequential generations of experimenters that are passing down the knowledge that they have achieved in their generation and in their lifetime to their offspring and trying to achieve the best outcome, the best monster, the best experiment over the course of those 3 generations. But the problem is you do not get to pass along everything that you have, and you are only going to be able to pass along whatever is written down in your journal and one experiment. So all of the other things that you were doing leading up to that have to be very calculated and very planned out and according, rather than just, sometimes with worker placements, the accumulation of things that are allowing you to then subsequently do stuff. Well, you can accumulate and accumulate and accumulate in this, and it appears like you might just lose it then and not be able to utilize it if you don't time it well. And so the worker placement talks about here in the forums that there's going to be 3 different types of workers as well. You can have different effects of which worker is going to which place and affected accordingly that way as well. So, okay, someone's also been to your spot. Well, you can pay an extra to go to that. Now, the thing you need to know about these 3 various types of workers, servants, caretakers, and yourself, as it says, servants go to town, but actions on your estate will cause them to freak out and leave. Caretakers don't go anywhere in town. They only do the actions on your estate, and you yourself can go in either place, but you also get the benefit of being able to take an action twice. So that is the sort of nuance that you're going to see with the workers. So workers are all not just equal in that way. It also is self-described as more interactive. Now, not super interactive, not like a take that, but more than just a multiplayer solitaire game in the description as well when they talk about it here in the forums, which is, honestly, as someone who is not a worker placement fan, I like more of the interaction in general. Artwork looks great. And this is a prototype from what the comments are saying, so that's encouraging already. Now they talk about what the actual gameplay is going to look like is at the beginning of the game, you get, say, like, this is teleportation. This is your masterpiece, piece de résistance, if you will, that you are trying to achieve over the course of 3 generations. There are also going to be different levels of experiments, like this is an A, this is a C. So those are going to give you different levels of victory points in order to sort of help you along your way in getting this piece de résistance. The other thing that they mentioned is between generations, there is going to be a sort of a branch point of each of these storylines in terms of like teleportation, for example. And I think you can see that here in the upper left-hand corner. There's an A, 2 Bs, and 3 Cs. So depending on how your A event works, you may end up on the left B or the right B. And depending on the B, you're either going to end up, on one of 2. So even within you doing teleportation, this game versus the next game, say, you may end up with a completely different endpoint. Or you could up with the same endpoint with a different in between. So it depends on how you want to take it and how the game plays out. So you can see now why this is one of my pre-picks of the week. And so you should be checking this out when it launches, because obviously it's a Euro worker style placement game. So they better have their metal coins, right? Anyway, sorry, couldn't resist. That is My Father's Work launching on the 27th. Also launching on the 27th, Cyber Odyssey, Breach into the Unknown. We know next to nothing about this. I've seen it mentioned a few places. I think we know very little about Cyber Odyssey currently. There is a little preview here that mentions it's launching on the 27th. It's a 2 to 4 player game. You're going to be recruiting agents, sending them all over the city, trying to collect clues is what it sounds like. There's 5 districts of a city called New Eden, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on. There really isn't a whole lot more information. I guess they're just describing it as an open world cyberpunk game with investigation as its core, to read the tagline, if you will. Dread Joker website doesn't even have a whole lot more on it in terms of what's coming out. Now, you may know them from the previous Oko Chronicles, which ran on Kickstarter, I believe, last year and did relatively well. But apart from that, there is very little imaging of the miniatures and the core box and the vehicles, and a little trailer, but not a whole lot else. So it's going to be sort of an under the radar one, and it's going to be a big unknown. How successful? What is it going to look like? How is it going to play? I have no idea. I've heard nothing about this from anywhere, and so either they're playing it really close to the vest, or it's going to be a big mystery when it launches on the 27th, so you can check it out if that appeals to you, because, you know what? I like a little bit of mystery, so I'll check it out for you and let you know. There you go. Cyber Odyssey. Next up is Judgement Internal Champions 2021 game, going to be launching on the 27th as well. It is a MOBA type game, again, as we've seen a couple recently, and it is a expansion to a 2017 base game, Judgement, which is really an odd duck if you think of what's out there. A 9.5 rating of 14 ratings as a two-player MOBA game from Gunmeister Games, and there's not a whole lot of information, even on the base game. Very, very little. There's videos of gameplay. It looks like it's a 5-on-5 or a 3-on-3, but still only about 9 videos there of what it is, and it's a revamped version, is what they're saying. You have 32 millimeter resin miniatures, so I think you're gonna be talking expense there, resin. But they also say the PVC is going to be available, so we'll see what the price point is there. 2.0, it's going to have hexagonal overlay. You're going to be just doing the MOBA thing. Your heroes are going to be leveling up. You're going to give you more abilities. You're going to have artifacts that you can equip. You're going to be, killing neutral monsters that are going to be getting in the way and stopping you from attacking or defeating your enemy in the first place. And they also talk about terrain. So honestly, I have no idea what to think of this. And the MOBA is all of a sudden becoming the rage. Battle for Paternia, I'm going down to the last minute with this one about whether or not I'm going to back. And again, for me, I like the idea and the concept of MOBAs, but MOBAs are hard for me to hit the table because I don't think my wife would be enjoying, and my kids aren't old enough yet to understand the strategy. So definitely a niche within a niche. But if you're interested, I mean, this one looks like it could be high concept and high risk, high reward. But we'll kind of see what it actually looks like on the page when it launches on the 27th. Now, this is my pick of the week, number 2, Stationfall. This is a described game as the heavy deduction type game for Euro lovers. Isn't that a weird combination of things? But telling crazy stories, this space station, which is 15 minutes until it blows up, you have one of 12 unique characters with unique abilities and asymmetric situations and objectives that are trying to do whatever they need to do to survive and get off the station, while the other people are trying to do the same thing. It is a 2 to 9 player game, and that's where the deduction social element comes in. If you were wondering, the reason why I described it as a Euro or heavy gamers deduction game is because right now, and means very little, I know, but the weighted average on Board Game Geek is a 3.4. Right? 3.4, if you know what that means. That's a lot heavier than any of your other deduction games. And they talk about it having a lot of overhead in terms of initial learning curve as well as terminology, but the storytelling that comes from it and the comparisons on there are not BSG, but more Nemesis-like. And I believe there's a Space Biff quote, if you're familiar with Space Biff, that says it blows the storytelling of Nemesis out of the water. Now, what does that mean? What does it entail? How is it going to look like? What are the mechanisms going to actually be? I don't know. There's a couple videos on how to play, but this is what I was talking about when I said that the overhead is going to be high. It's a 40-minute how to play video. And this is by Matt Eklund. So this is going to be a little bit of a denser learning curve, as I mentioned. So here you can see this is all the stuff. So the setup for this is relatively complex, and you can see that this big map is the station itself. It looks like you're going to be traveling around doing various things at various places, and you can see obviously the places or some of the people that you're going to be differentiating between. They describe it more like side reel, confluence type of Nemesis rather than, direct deduction in that sense. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this actually plays. And I kind of want to see what the price point would be for something like this, because I have to expect that the price point is going to be a lot more than your average deduction game, given the complexity, given the overall amount of components, given the tendency that people over deluxify nowadays. I have to imagine that that could skyrocket the price even further. I'm intrigued. You can see why. It's a great concept, but okay, rubber meets the road. Let's see what it happens, and let's see what they show us on the 27th when it launches. I'm going to be watching. Next is Reventure Orbtale, also launching on the 27th. And this is sort of a strange game. They say it's a sequel to the original game Reventure, which was quote-unquote the game with 100 endings. So you want to get one of these 4 legendary orbs, which can grant any wish. And so one of 12 heroes is embarking on missions to retrieve them against foes, dangers, whatever else is out there. And you're going to have 3 phases in the game itself. And so this is very, very interesting. Again, I want to see what this looks like in concept. It reminds me a little bit just on the sheer premise of something like Chaosmos, which is good in theory, but definitely needs the right group and needs to sing in the right circumstances. And exploration phase, you're just drawing 2 cards. You keep up to 3 cards in your inventory or your organization, and then the combat phase, you just attack each other, doing sort of a paper, scissors, rock type application. Now, there you go. That's about it. So you want to gather all 4 orbs by drawing them or stealing them from other people's corpses, because each person only has 5 health points. So this is going to be a big take that for 2 to 6 players. And again, a big direct take that paper, scissors, rock game. I don't know. This is one of those games where I look at and I go, I could see this funding really well, and I could easily see this having a lot of trouble. Depends on the appeal, depends on the artwork, depends on the direction. Because it's simplistic, but is it going to be deep enough? And is it going to be too much pile on the leader that sometimes people are turned off by? I have no idea, because there's not really a whole lot of other information on here. So check it out when it launches on the 27th. Now we have King's Trial also launching on the 27th. 2 to 5 player game, trying to get the throne, but you gotta kill the dragon first. Now you're going to be going through randomly generated terrain each game in the form of these hexes, trying to achieve various quests, going to be potentially hindered or helped by what you're running into along the way. And you can see sort of here as these standees are traveling, and you can see the dragon at the far end with the castle over here. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be having these various cards that are going to have events on them. The dragon has captured you. He is annoyed and pushes you 10 spaces back. Or Sir Squeaky is here, and he is the most feared cavalry in the realm. So again, thematically, who knows what's going on there. But what you're trying to do here is fulfill 3 quests and capture the dragon successfully and be the first one to do so. Now going back over to the Board Game Geek page, very little information otherwise, a bunch of pictures, but there are no rules, there are no other videos except for like a 2-minute just intro video. So this looks like the Squirrely Squirrels one that was capturing the nuts earlier. A kid's game that definitely could have some more nuance and some depth to it, but also it could just be very straightforward and a little bit too straightforward even in that sense to make me necessarily want to play it with my kids when they're already playing other things more complicated. So I have absolutely no idea what this is going to look like or what the detail level is going to be and what the mechanisms are going to entail. So I think you're going to just have to check it out on the 27th if you're looking for something like that squirrel catching the nut game earlier that I'm completely blanking on the title of, but I know a lot of you are interested in because I personally was piqued by it as well. So this reminds me of that sort of vibe. So check it out when it launches on the 27th from Laughing Hyena Games. Next up, we have Harsh Shadows, which is a 1-player solo affair, a remake of To Catch a Spy. This is also launching on the 27th. Hand management, grid-style movement, with a bit of deduction thrown in. The basic premise is you have a 3x3 grid of cards of locations, and there are going to be clues, events, or a bomb hidden under one of them, and you are going to be trying to deduce with the clues that you find underneath, where you are trying to use the clues that are given to you while avoiding bombs that are going to cause you to discard cards in order to find the secret agent and capture the agent before they escape. In order to win, not only do you have to capture the spy, you need to be in the same place as them, you have to have planted a tracking bug, have a matching set of 3 cards, and just make it to them through the random directions that they are going to go based on the card arrows each turn. There is a review from Purple Phoenix Games on Board Game Geek, and if you like solo player games with a relatively low threshold of overhead, this might be worth checking out. So there you go, launching on the 27th. Next up on the 27th also is Lost Empire's War for the New Sun. Now this is a 2-player head-to-head deck construction, deck building type sci-fi strategy game. It's a card-driven area control style game where you are making up a deck of 18 cards to go head-to-head against one of the other factions. You're trying to control artifacts that, if you control enough, allow you to do the end game building, which is called a worm gate, in order to win. You're going to use your abilities and your upgrades to destroy the enemy's abilities, aliens, technology, whatever you need to in order to win. There's not a whole lot of information out there, but the art actually is pretty fantastic. So this one is definitely going to be an under-the-radar thing. So you might want to check it out if this is your fancy with the 1v1 sci-fi type dueling games. So it looks like it might be offering a little bit of a different spin on it with the different 4 factions that they have. If this seems of your ilk, check it out when it launches on the 27th. Speaking of tactical card games, Even though this, Azrah, War of the Heralds, is launching on the 30th. This is another 2-player head-to-head tactical card dueling game. Very little information beyond the fact that you have a general gameplay description of your Celestial, and you're trying to build your army of guardians to defeat the other person. Deck building, deck drafting, and resource management are the main key mechanics that you're going to be looking out for here, so slightly different than the previous game. And by defeating the other party's guardians, which they say are the typical archetypes of your role-playing games, your paladin, your warlock, your fighter, that sort of thing, you slowly whittle the opponent's health down from 5 to 0. The first person to do so wins. Again, there's a little bit of art on here, but there isn't a whole lot of other information about what it's going to look like and how it's going to play and what the price point is going to be. So again, if you're in the market, there's a lot of them now. 2-player tactical skirmish games, card-driven. Check it out when Azrah launches on April 30. Next up, going back to the 27th again, 414 BC, the Siege of Syracuse. This is a solo player warish game. Per the description, the game centers around offering field commands to the Syrian as well as Athenian field commanders in order to defeat each other. The game has been designed so that you can take the role of either side of the conflict and go against a solitaire AI opponent. First one to reduce the other's morale down to 0 wins the game. Setup, they say, is relatively low. Great strategy, great tactical reactions in terms of what happens and how you react to the circumstances that you are presented with. And that's about all we know. Personally, war games, well out of my depth, but if that's your ilk, check it out. It's second in a series of 3 that they're doing in the Worthington Publishing Great Series. So there you go when it launches on the 27th. Dominations Road to Civilization, the 2019 game, is coming back to Kickstarter for a reprint, deluxeification, some sort of nuanced new thing that's going to allow them to do another campaign. This is also going to be launching on April 29. They say in the forums, up for grabs, the new stuff on this one is going to be an expansion called Rise and Fall. It's going to offer 2 separate things in this campaign. The expansion, which offers 2 modules, one of which is the corruption, which replaces the domination mechanic or tokens. The other is glory and decline, another module that can be added. The other thing that they're doing is it's offering a deluxe sleeve or packaging, so it allows you to store all of the components from the previous game and the other expansions as well. If you're not familiar with what this game is in the first place, it is a domino-driven civilization-style game with a tech tree, set collection, and obviously some modularity given the expansions as well as the domino nature of the tiles in the first place. And it takes your typical civilization-type game with that being its twist. It's a 2 to 4 player game from Holy Grail Games. It's got a 7.6 rating on Board Game Geek, and it's not been terribly widely available since its first initial run. So if it interests you, check it out when it launches on the 29th. Last up, launching us as the very first game into May, on May 1st, Glory, the second edition. 2019, 2 to 4 player game with an RPG element. More of a roll and move, achieving quests, trying to earn points to be the one with the most at the end. Low overhead, small box, second edition. What are we going to see? How is it going to work? How is it going to compare? I don't know. But it's relatively straightforward as you are basically rolling, moving around the edge of the mat or the board and completing or trying to compete whatever space you land on, mitigating it however you can with your various abilities and loot and equipment that you've obtained thus far. So, if you're looking for something light and RPG-ish, it's easy to get to the table. Might be of interest. Check it out when it launches on May number 1. Light week. Light week. Like I said at the beginning, there's going to be a bunch of videos coming out in the next couple days. Hopefully not nearly as long as the roundups, but just little tidbits here and there. My full thoughts on Monster Hunter, my full thoughts on Marvel United, my full thoughts on X-Men. That one's probably going to be sort of pushed to the end because that campaign still has more. And Gosh knows they probably have 3 or 4 more expansions to show us, so I'll have some more information to make it a complete should you back or not, or what to know. And, Monday morning bringing the hotness, right? So, a little bit of everything. Hope you enjoyed it. It's going to be a great weekend. Have a great weekend. Play something. We played Bullet last weekend. It is amazing. Expect a review from that as well in the near future. As well, stuff behind me. And thanks to you guys, I'll give you a little side note if you're watching here at the end. Thanks to you guys watching stuff and subscribing. I have been in contact with a couple big publishers, and hopefully I should have some really good stuff for you guys coming up in the next month or two in terms of looking at, as well as previewing maybe even a little bit of games that are going to be sort of really on my big radar. So don't want to be too spoilery unless you're on my Patreon, because then I'll probably tell you. If you want to know early, check it out there. I'll let you guys know on Patreon. I'll give you some spoilers. So, as always though, have a great time, have fun, stay classy, and I'll see you around.